Hey everybody, Bob Lazaro here from All Things Leland, and I'm really pleased. Our guest today is Mike Kozlowski, Executive Director of the Wilmington Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. And so our conversation is about all things transportation planning, not only in Leland, but in the greater Wilmington area. So, hey Mike, thank you for joining us.
Sure, it's a pleasure to be on and doing the All Things Leland podcast this morning.
I
So I
appreciate
appreciate
it. Thank you. I mean, let's get right into it. I mean, because a lot of people, a fast-growing community, people don't know what an MPO is or what it serves. So, just really briefly, what geographic area does the MPO serve, and what municipalities are included in the planning jurisdiction?
Sure. So just a little bit of background about MPOs. We were created out of the Federal Highway Act of 1965. The Wilmington Urban Area MPO was created in the early 1970s. And so we are federally designated and federally mandated and federally funded. And we provide transportation planning services for 494 square miles, serve a population of about 300,000 people in southeastern North Carolina. And our members consist of uh, all of New Hanover County and portions of Brunswick and Pender. The membership includes 7 municipalities and 3 counties. So those are the city of Wilmington, which is our largest municipal member, Leland, Belleville, Nebraska, Wrightsville Beach, Carolina Beach, Curry Beach, and then, uh, as I mentioned, New Hanover, Brunswick, and Pender counties.
That's quite a big area, quite a big area. And how does the MPO coordinate the transportation planning between the federal, state, and local government agencies? Because there's quite a slice of involvement on all levels of government.
Sure. So federal law requires transportation planning to be conducted in a continuing, cooperative, and comprehensive manner. That's what we were created to do, and that's one of our key responsibilities. We have a number of different requirements from the federal government, whether it be developing our metropolitan transportation plan to developing a congestion management process uh, to collaborating on the development of the state and MPO's transportation improvement program. And so uh, the partnerships that we have with our members, with the NCDOT, with our transportation partners like Wilmington International Airport or the Cape Fear Public Transportation Authority are very important. And so, uh, I see us as the conduit for bringing those entities together for transportation planning. And so, you know, the coordination really depends on the effort that we're undertaking. Um, as I mentioned, we're required to develop a metropolitan transportation plan every 5 years. We were designated as a TMA in 2012, which means that's a transportation management area of men. Our population threshold was over 200,000, um, and so that added some additional requirements, but it also added some funding that we receive and we can allocate at our discretion. And so we work with our members on, say, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Um, we have a Metropolitan Transportation Plan Steering Committee and a Citizen Advisory Committee. Each of those committees included or were appointed by our members. We have a 13-member board that sets the policy and direction for the organization. And, so our membership serve on that board. I mentioned the MTP, but we also conduct other transportation studies like corridor plans, bike ped plans, greenway plans. We're currently working on a safe streets and roads for all uh, comprehensive safety action plan that we receive federal funds for. And so, depending on the plan and the intended outcomes of that plan, depends on who's involved in those committees. But those committees are typically made up of our membership. If we're doing a specific plan in the town of Leland, then the town's representatives and sometimes appointees would be on the steering committee for that effort. But we involve a large group in our transportation planning process, and we appreciate the relationships and partnerships that we have with our members. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a board that sets the policy and direction for the organization, which is comprised of our members, and we also have a technical coordinating committee, which is the staff from those various jurisdictions. And so I see us as the conduit for bringing everybody together to talk about transportation.
Yeah, I mean, having been involved with a regional organization, it's great to get everyone around the table to talk about common problems and solutions and how people can work together to get things done. I was going to ask you, what is the role of the MPO in prioritizing federal transportation funding in the region?
So we work collaboratively with NCDOT. We're a partner with NCDOT in the prioritization of projects in our region. As I mentioned, we developed the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is the blueprint and the foundation for the transportation infrastructure projects in our region. But then we're also part of the prioritization process. And so prior to 2013, NCDOT used what was called the equity formula to distribute funds through the state and MPO transportation improvement programs. And in 2013, the General Assembly passed a strategic transportation investment formula and a strategic mobility law that outlined a different way to prioritize projects based on a more data-driven process. Mm-hmm. And so projects are funded in 3 different tiers: the statewide, regional, and division tiers. And so as a partner in the prioritization process, the MPO, we use our long-range plan to develop the projects that then we submit for consideration and scoring. We're required by law to adopt a local input methodology for how we assign our local input points. And then we assign local input points at the regional and division tier. So projects at the regional tier are scored with 70% data, 30% local input, and that local input is shared between the MPOs and NCDOT. And so DOT has 15% of the local input, and the MPO has 15% of the local input. And then at the division tier, it's 50% data and 50% local input. So we share that local input 25% with the department and 25% with the MPO. And so we assign the project, the scores, and then it goes to DOT. They do their analysis. The scores, are released. The highest scoring projects typically receive the funding, and then we must mutually adopt with the state and MPO's transportation improvement program. So that outlines that we're involved throughout the process of how a project is submitted into prioritization and then scored and then ultimately adopted in the STIP and MTO.
Okay. A lot of this involves public money, obviously. So how does the MPO involve the public in the planning process?
So the public is involved in a number of different ways into our planning process. So we have a public comment period at the beginning of each of our public meetings. We've received a number of public comments lately about U5710, which is an interchange project in New Hanover County, where Military Cutoff and Eastwood Road intersect. But the public has the opportunity to participate and make comment at the beginning of each of our regularly scheduled meetings. We have 15 minutes that's set aside for public comment. And then also, as we talked about the STIP and the MPO's TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, we update that frequently through amendments and modifications. And so when we have an amendment, it requires a 30-day public comment period. And so the public has the opportunity to comment on any of our amendments. And then also, in our planning process, we involve the public significantly in our planning process. And I thought about our long range plan or our metropolitan transportation plan, which the board just adopted in October of this year. We had an extensive public outreach and engagement campaign, and it was broken down into 2 phases. And so the first phase included a number of open houses. It included a public survey, an interactive map, presentations, and also us attending outreach events to receive feedback from the community on challenges, needs, and priorities. And then as part of that, we received over 6,000 public comments through that phase 1 public outreach campaign. And then we developed the plan. And then phase 2 included another public comment period, because we wanted to make sure that the plan that we developed, we got right. We wanted to make sure that there was community buy-in prior to taking it to our board. And so we had, a public comment period. I had a number of open houses where we went out to the community. We also had a virtual open house to receive feedback. And then once we got that feedback, we considered that feedback and then incorporated any changes that we thought were necessary, and then took it to our board for approval. And so, that's just an example of how we've involved the public with the MTP. But really, when we develop a plan, for a community or work with the community to develop a plan, like a bike ped plan or a corridor study or something like that, the outreach is tailored to that plan. But we have a public participation plan that the board has adopted. And so we use that public participation plan to really get feedback from the community, because we do value the feedback that we receive.
You mentioned the Transportation Improvement Program. How often is that updated?
So the prioritization process that I talked about earlier is updated every 2 years. Typically, it's by federal law, it's required to be updated every 4, but we update it in North Carolina on a 2-year cycle. But the amendments and modifications that I mentioned earlier are updated more frequently. And so, if a project is either delayed or accelerated, or if we need to add a project to the STIP, that is done more frequently than the every 2-year process. The board and NCDOT typically adopt the updated STIP every 2 years. And so, in, I guess it was July, the NCDOT and the MPO board both approved the 2026 to 2035 state and MPO transportation improvement program, which outlines the projects that we envision to be funded over the next 10 years. And so we're already starting prioritization 8.0, which will develop the next 10-year program. And then it's envisioned that will be adopted for the 2028 to 2037 window. So, the prioritization process typically is a 2-year process, and we typically adopt the STIP and MPO TIP every 2 years, but we do update it very frequently throughout the year.
I mean, obviously there needs to be a lot of long-range planning when you're talking about transportation. So, what kind of transportation projects are included in the long-range transportation plan?
So our plan is not just a highway plan. It focuses on all modes of transportation. And so that includes aviation, bicycle and pedestrian, ferry and waterway, rail, public transportation, and roadway improvements. And so the MTP includes projects and policies to advance a multimodal transportation network. And as I mentioned earlier, it lays the blueprint and the foundation for the transportation infrastructure for our region. Federal law requires that MTPB have a 20-year planning horizon. Ours actually has a 25-year planning horizon. And another thing that's important about the MTP is it's fiscally constrained. And so it's not just a wish list of projects that we want to build. We actually do an in-depth financial analysis to determine what is financially feasible over the life of the plan. And that's a large part of our planning process. And so we have alternative funding included in the plan that, if the board decides they want to look at like a local option sales tax or tolling, that's included as alternative funding. But we also do a historical analysis to identify what projects we can reasonably build. And as I mentioned earlier, it focuses on all modes of transportation. It's not just one mode, roadway or another.
So it truly is planes, trains, and automobiles, and then some. So, which I appreciate, bike ped, et cetera, is really important. I mean, we don't have a great deal of time. I know it's a busy day for you, but one of the things that the MPO does for local governments is transportation impact analysis. So I thought maybe you could just basically touch on that.
Sure. So, when a development generates a certain number of trips, and in most of our area, that's 100 AM or PM peak hour trips, then a traffic impact analysis is required. And so that traffic impact analysis looks at traffic volumes. It projects those volumes out based on an agreed upon growth rate. And then those volumes are assigned to the intersections, the study intersections that are part of the traffic impact analyses for proposed development. And then there's an analysis that's completed, and then the outcome is the mitigation measures. Mm-hmm. So, if a development's going to have a negative impact on an intersection, or a turn lane is required or something like that, the traffic impact analysis will identify what the mitigation measures are necessary to build that development and not degrade the intersection from the level of service as it exists today. And so TIAs are very important. Transportation impacts land use impacts transportation. And so trying to integrate the two is very important. And so, we work very closely with our members to assist in the review and coordination of traffic impact analyses, also with NCDOT on that coordination and review. And then, if there's a development in Leland that meets the threshold for requiring a TIA, and the developer conducts a TIA, we review the TIA, we coordinate the improvements with the town, with NCDOT and the MPO, and then we issue the letter that identifies the mitigation measures necessary to accommodate that development. So it's a very important tool to ensure that the infrastructure is in place to accommodate any of the development that's occurring.
And in that instance, the developer may pay for that improvement to offset the impact of the project itself.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
I want to thank you for taking your time, and I would urge those folks who view this video to check out the website. There's a lot of great data sets there as well in their GIS hub, which is very instructive, from traffic counts to sidewalk and bike networks, etc. Mike, I want to thank you. I know you have a busy day today, and I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity to join. If there's ever another opportunity to participate, I'd certainly be willing to do that. We do have a busy day today. We've got a board meeting this afternoon at 3:00. A lot of good information on there. And so, it's going to be a fun day for the MPO. And so, I look forward. I also enjoy doing these kind of talks where we can talk about the MPO As somebody who's been in this role for over 20 years, and grown the organization from when I got here 3 to now 13, the work that we do is very important. And I think, the community needs to understand, and it's a partnership. It's a partnership with the town. It's a partnership with NCDOT. We enjoy the relationships that we have with our partners. We have great relationships with the town and with the department, and we work very closely and collaboratively. And so I appreciate you putting on the podcast to allow us to get the information out about the organization.
Hey, my pleasure. Things just don't happen in a vacuum. So, again, check out their website. Plenty of great information about the important work that they do. So, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.